साथियों, आज के सेशन में आप सभी का स्वागत है। आज हम पढ़ेंगे मेथड्स ऑफ साइकोलॉजी, जो कि सेकेंडरी लेवल का चैप्टर है। हम बात कर रहे थे मेथड्स ऑफ साइकोलॉजी की, जिसमें हमने डिफरेंट अप्रोचेस ऑफ साइकोलॉजी की बात की और हमने देखे कि व्हाट आर द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ अ गुड साइकोलॉजिकल रिसर्च, एंड देन वी टॉक्ड अबाउट द मेथड्स अंडर साइकोलॉजी to study various behaviors and processes. So the first methods that we discussed was observation. Next we are moving on to experimentation. So basically in experimentation, a experimenter studies the effect of independent variable on the dependent variable by deliberately manipulating and controlling one variable. So here we are going to discuss the two important terms first: independent variable and the dependent variable, which is DV. So basically dependent variable is called the DV. So what happens is, independent variable is something that has no influence. For example, so let's understand this with an example. This might be confusing a little if we do it without an example. So if a study is being conducted on the motivation to study motivation to study for exams, say before 1 week. So here motivation to study is our one variable and studying 1 week before exams is our second variable. So now we are going to identify which is independent variable and which is dependent variable. So as we just said, studying the motivation to study just before, say 1 week before exams. So here motivation to study is our independent variable and the dependent variable is the studying behavior before 1 week. So we are going to see कि अगर आप एक हफ्ता पहले से पढ़ाई शुरू कर रहे हो एग्ज़ाम के लिए, तो आपका मोटिवेशन लेवल कितना है एग्ज़ाम्स के लिए बेसिकली. ओके, सो दिस इज़ अ लिटिल थोड़ा confusing example. Let's take another example. Let's take a more simple example. So for example, let's say if we are going to a place, so we are going to say a playground, for example. In a playground, what is the behavior, what is the probability of a child not playing? So in a playground, what is the probability of a child not playing? So playground is a independent variable here, but the dependent variable is not playing. क्योंकि अगर कोई बच्चा playground में जा रहा है, so there is a high probability that they are going there to play. So if we are choosing any variable that is related to playing in a playground, so playground is the independent variable and the dependent variable is probability of playing and or not playing, whatever we choose to study. So these are the types of variables we study in a psychological experiment. So it says that here what the experimenter does is they manipulate the dependent variable on purpose. So there can be different levels of the dependent variable that can be studied, and the experimenter will choose it according to their need. So for example, if for example just we took playground का example, तो उसमें हमने बोला ना जैसे कि playing और not playing दोनों behavior हैं, तो experimenter क्या study करना चाहता है, क्या चीज़ वो manipulate करना चाहता है, playing का behavior या not playing का, ये उनके ऊपर depend करता है, and they will deliberately manipulate and control one variable which is IV, which can be IV or DV both, दोनों में से कोई भी किया जा सकता है. Next, two groups are present in an experimental group. So basically here we are saying is that experiment में दो groups होते हैं. Experimental group होता है एक, which is here experimental group, and one is control group. So the experimental group is the one where participants receive the independent variable. So if let's understand it in the case of a medical trial. कोई किसी दवाई की स्टडी चल रही है कि वो कितनी इफेक्टिव है और कितनी नॉट इफेक्टिव है, नॉन इफेक्टिव है, तो उसमें क्या होगा, जो एक्सपेरिमेंटल ग्रुप है उसको वो मेडिसिन दी जाएगी, और क्योंकि हमारा जो डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल और इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल है वो हम देख रहे हैं कि हम किसको इंडिपेंडेंट और डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल देने वाले हैं. पार्टिसिपेंट्स रिसीव द इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल, तो एक्सपेरिमेंटल ग्रुप को हम दवाई देंगे, और जो हमारा कंट्रोल ग्रुप है, बिहेवियर इज ऑब्जर्व विदाउट गिविंग द इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल, उनको हम दवाई नहीं देंगे और हम उनका बिहेवियर फिर देखेंगे. अब इस केस में होता क्या है, ऐसे तो बहुत सारे कॉम्प्लिकेशंस इंट्रोड्यूस हो जाएंगे. सो व्हाट इज डन टू एक्चुअली सी द बिहेवियर जो हम स्टडी कर रहे हैं वो एक्चुअली ऑब्जेक्टिव है. तो यहाँ पे हम क्या करते हैं, बहुत सारी टेक्निक्स होती हैं टू काउंटर बैलेंस द इफेक्ट, विच वी विल सी लेटर ऑन, अभी इसी पीपीटी में. सो लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड फर्स्ट, जस्ट अ मोमेंट. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So experimenter has to take care of other variables as they might confound the effect of independent variable. Such variables are called relevant variables. So obviously there are various other different variables in the environment while we are studying any process, and it is the duty of the experimenter to make sure that these variables do not actually influence the study that is being done. They do not confound with the independent variable. Whatever we are studying should not be influenced by the relevant variables. So there are three kinds of relevant variables: organismic, situational, sequential. So organismic is basically related to the organism, such as the gender of the subject, or say the race of the subject, or the caste of the subject. These should be not, so you should never say discriminate, or say your study should be very objective in this manner, that gender is not one reason that your results are being influenced. Next is situational. In what kind of situation you are doing the experiment. Say if you are doing experiment in a very chaotic environment, such as there is a lot of noise going on and there is a lot of say sounds are coming, तो जो subject है उसका जो mental state है that will be influenced, because they will not concentrate on the experiment or the task that they have been assigned properly. So this is situational. Then is sequential. Sequential is basically in what manner you have decided or designed the procedure of your study. So for example, if we say that you have to give a dish, you have to test say for example 4 dishes, and we say that you have to tell the level of sweetness and the level of sourness. So it should be that when you are giving the sweet dish to the person or the subject, you should at least maintain a gap so that their palate is neutral by the time they taste the sour dish. Otherwise what will happen is if you give them sour, like अगर आपने उनको sour पहले दे दिया है तो जो उनका palate है अगर 10-15 मिनट का गैप नहीं मिला तो वो sweet उनको ज़्यादा लगेगा, क्योंकि अभी जीभ पे पुराना sourness है तो sweet बहुत ज़्यादा feel करेगा जो subject है. So there need to be a particular process or procedure to follow certain sequence in the study so that the variables can be studied properly. And all these sequences that you need to maintain in your study so that these sequential variables does not confound confound the results of your studies. Next is experiments are carried out in controlled setting, but some experiments are also conducted in natural life conditions. They are called field experiments or quasi experiments. So the one that are done in the controlled setting or say laboratory are called laboratory experiment, but the one which are done in the field are called field experiments or quasi experiments. So basically what happens is quasi experiment is a experiment, but it so for example if we choose to say study a learning method and we say this is already established that the learning method is very effective for a learner, and there is this another method which is not very effective, but just to see and confirm the outcomes are true, we are again conducting a study. So now what नाउ वी कैन नॉट जस्ट से कि हम लर्नर को ये नहीं बता सकते ना कि ये स्टडी जो है, ये वाला जो लर्निंग मेथड है वो अच्छा है और ये इफ़ेक्टिव है, और ये वाला जो है वो अच्छा नहीं है, क्योंकि अगर हम उनको अच्छा नहीं है जानबूझ के दे रहे हैं तो ये हमारी तरफ से रॉन्ग है. दिस इज़ नॉट एथिकल ऑन आवर पार्ट. सो व्हाट वी डू इज़ वी लेट द लर्नर चूज ऑन themselves कि whatever group you want to choose, you are free to choose. But they will go through the independent variable. They'll be a part of the study. The data will be recorded properly. And that is why it is called an experiment. It's just that the IV has been decided by the environment or by the subject itself. But it is still an experiment, and that is why it is called quasi-experiment. Quasi basically means kind of fake experiments, but it is not exactly fake, क्योंकि there are still certain methods and procedures that we are following to maintain the objectivity in this experiment. Next, give me a moment. Next we have the unwanted effects of the study, which we just discussing, that organismic variables हैं और sequential variables हैं. So now we are talking about how to control the unwanted effects in a research study. Some techniques to control the unwanted effect of relevant variables are these. So let's start with the first, elimination. Extraneous variables are eliminated from the experimental setting. So okay, so here the first question comes is, what is extraneous variable? And any variable that is in the surrounding, for example noise, for example if there is dim light in the room, there is not proper ventilation, these are all extraneous variable which might affect the performance of the subject. So the experimenter or the researcher need to make sure that these variables are eliminated. So as a researcher, what we should do is we should make sure that when our subject comes for the research study, we provide them with a proper sitting space, a room that is properly lit, and we need to provide them a noise-free surrounding. So this is elimination, and that is how we do elimination. Next is constant conditions. The extraneous variables are kept constant. So in case if we are not able to provide the subject an area which is noise free, and there is like, if we live nearby say an airport, so the planes will be coming and going on and off, so we cannot ask the airport to stop the planes because we are conducting a study. That is not possible for us. So what we are going to do is we will take it as a constant that this noise is going to be there. What we can do is this will be kept throughout constant for all the members of the study. What we will avoid is ki we do this one participant here near the airport and the another one somewhere far off in the city. That will be wrong. I said you are kind of manipulating your own study because of the extraneous variables. Next is random assignment. All the participants have equal chance to be exposed to all the conditions. So what happens is random assignment is usually used in the experiment method. Here each and every individual in the population has equal chance to be exposed to the experimental group or the control group. So for example, if there is a group of say 50 patients who are suffering from cold, and there is this medicine that says that it can treat cold in 1 day. So the 50 participants of this study will be randomly assigned to the experimental group which will get the medicine, and the control group which will not get the medicine. So 25 will be given to the experimental group and 25 will be given to the control group, but randomly. There will be no कि आपने उनको मतलब पहले से प्रायोरिटी हम किसी को नहीं देंगे कि इसको यही वाला ग्रुप मिलना है उसको वाला मिलना है, नहीं. We'll keep it random. Next we have is matching. So here the relevant variables are equated. So matching can be understood from the example of IQ. So what happens is, so if a research study is trying to understand the memory of a participant, so the memory of say 50 people, how do they perform on a memory task? So memory is somehow related to our IQ as well. So what we do is we take their basic IQ test so that we are able to calculate their IQ, and then what we do is if there are say 5 people who got the IQ of say 115, so we put these 5 people in one group, and then if say 5 people got the IQ of 100 to 102 के बीच में, so we'll put them in another group. So this is matching, where we kept जो participants हैं उनको in a appropriate group as per the level that we have decided. It can be IQ, it can be for example say number, digital numeracy कितना है किसी का, so how many numbers they can actually remember. So that is basically memory again. So yeah, you got my point here, that we equate them on certain procedure that we have selected or certain level that we have selected. So that is matching. Next is counterbalancing. Participants are divided in two groups. So here in counterbalancing, counterbalancing तो इस तरीके से तो ऐसे होगी जैसे random assignment है कि दो groups में divide कर दिया. But how does counterbalancing differs? So basically what happens in counterbalancing is if we have two groups, one group is A, one group is B, and we have two treatments, treatment 1 and we have treatment 2. So what we will do is we will put the group A to treatment 1 first. सबसे पहले A group गया treatment 1 के लिए and the B group went to treatment 2. Whereas in the second trial of this study, we will put the group B for T1 यानी कि treatment 1 and the A group for treatment 2. And that is how we have given constant conditions to both of them and the constant treatment to both of the groups. So this is counterbalancing, how we have counterbalanced the sequence. Now we are sure that the sequence is maintained because दोनों को दोनों treatment का exposure मिला है. So that is counterbalancing. So these were the methods to control unwanted effects in an experiment or in research. So now we have the different psychological tools. So, apologies, this is the method, this is not the tool. So basically case study is just like any other method that we have still so far discussed, यानी कि experimentation, observation, just like that we have case study also. So what happens in case study is it is a method of collecting information about the person in terms of his experiences, relationships and interaction with others so as to prepare profile of the person, and this method is called case study. So here what we do is we collect all around information about an individual and prepare a profile of the individual. So all around means उनका birth से लेके present तक की हम सारी information we will try to collect by the individual, like by asking question to the individual, the family members or their friends. So we will collect a round of information about this person. So in this method, main unit of analysis is the individual, because we cannot do case study on a group because that will be very expensive and it will be a time-taking process, because we will be having a load of information. If we are doing case study on 50 people, we will need 50 people to conduct the case study, and that is very expensive. So that is why case study is usually done on individual or say 1 or 2 people at max. Next, it helps to locate unique experiences of life as well as the various emotional adjustment problems of the individual. So case study can also help in understanding the unique features of a person's life, because every individual faces different kind of experiences throughout their life, and how do they react, that is also unique to us all. And that is why case study is helpful in getting that kind of data which is unique to an individual. Next, to prepare a case history, usually interview, observation and psychological tests are used to obtain information about the individual, and data is taken from many sources such as family history, educational life, medical history and social life. To conduct a case study, we use different methods. interview. Case study itself, and it's a method to study an individual, but it also incorporates different methods in itself as well. So it involves observation, it involves interview, it involves psychological test as well. Case study is usually used in clinical psychology a lot of times to actually gather information about the client or say the patient. Next we have is survey. Survey is used to gather information in research by asking questions to a group of people. It is generally used to study the pattern of opinions, attitude, beliefs and values of the people. It is also used to test the hypothesis about the relationship of variables, especially when some incident takes place. So basically, survey is used to gather information in a research, and what happens is, so for example, any researcher who is conducting a survey, they will prepare a questionnaire, they'll prepare certain questions, and what they will do is, what is their targeted population, they will distribute the questionnaire in the survey to the population, targeted population, and they will try to see what is the opinion of this targeted population about the particular event that they are trying to take information about. And it is also used to test the hypothesis about the relationship of variables, especially when some incident takes place. इसका सबसे अच्छा example है when election polls are happening. So there is a lot of media channels cover different areas and ask people what party do they support, what party they are going to vote, or what party they would like to win, so as to gauge what party have more chances of winning in an election. So that is a survey. Next we have is, in survey, research is generally conducted through questionnaire or interview, in person, through telephone, SMS or email. So basically survey can be done through different methods such as interview or questionnaire, and it can be done one-on-one, or say, or so it can be forwarded on a mail, or it can be done on a telephone as well. So that was about it for the day. So we have discussed the methods of psychology in today's session, and we'll meet you in the next session. Thank you so much.